Hi, everyone. My name is Kate,
And I'm Carly.
and you're listening to Artwise. Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to Artwise. I just want to let all you guys know I have survived Hurricane Idalia. The longtime listeners will know. Yeah. Woo. Survived. I survived Hurricane Idalia. I know a lot of the listeners have been messaging me and asking me if I'm good because Tampa did get hit pretty hard. I'm okay. I'm safe. And something else I want to mention before we get too far into this episode is that I have Carly with me. That's not what I was going to mention though, but I figured I'd point it out. And then also, what was the other thing? Oh, this is the second to last episode of Artwise Season 3. So next week's episode is the season finale. I do not mention anywhere in the episode that it's the season finale. So next week, if you're listening to the episode and you're like, wow, this is the season finale, she does not mention anywhere that it's the season finale. That's because I didn't know at the time of recording for sure if I wanted it to be the season finale. But then once the episode finished, I was like, yeah, this will be a good season finale. And so that's why. But I'm just letting you guys know this is next week's episode will be the last one for a while. Okay? And then we're in our off season. So anyway, kind of long intro, but hi, welcome to Artwise. I'm here with Carly, and today we're going to talk about how to get good at art.
And then whatever miscellaneous things that come up along the way.
Miscellaneous art topics. Before we get into all that, I do want to say I have, for those of you who are watching the video version of this, I do have this water. They were buy one, get one free at Publix. Anyone who's from Florida, Publix is a grocery store. And they were buy one, get one free. And so I bought them and they're like flavored waters. And I'm like, I was just thinking before we got on here, right? And this isn't an ad or anything. I'm just saying this like from the bottom of my heart. Whenever I open like a water bottle and it has like a flavor, I can smell the flavor, but then I drink it and I'm like, this is just water. You know what I mean?
Have you ever had a White Claw?
Yeah. Well, I've tried one. I haven't drank a whole one, but
To
I would
me,
imagine it's the
to me,
same.
the hint
Yeah.
water is like White Claws. Like it's just a whisper of the flavor, nothing more.
Yeah. I've never finished a White Claw before.
I
I've
don't think
tried
I have
one.
either.
I think the last time I had tried one was in 2019. And I think I took 2 sips and I said, this is disgusting. And I didn't finish it. For those of you also who know me, I've never been like drunk before because every time like and I have no interest in ever being drunk. Like I'm just going to say that right now. I've never been drunk. I'm of age. I'm 20 how 20 I'm about to turn 24. And I've never been drunk before because every time I'm like in an environment where people are drinking and I'm like, yeah, I'll have a drink. I take like one sip and I'm like, oh my God, that burns and it tastes bad. This is not worth it immediately. And I just give my drink to somebody else. But
I'm on the same
anywho.
page.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not the biggest fan
So
of drinking. I'm more of like a social drinker, but when I do drink, it's usually something clear and very watered down.
yeah, yeah, yeah. One time I was at this bar called the Piano Bar, and it was a piano bar, like there was somebody playing piano. And I was like, can you just make me something without alcohol? And I swear to you, this bartender just like opens a can of pineapple juice and just dumps it in a cup and hands it to me. And that was delicious, first of all. But like I feel like being like a sober like a sober person anywhere is like people just don't know what to do with you. It's like so funny. That's why I'm glad that there are the brand. So this is something we could talk about that's art related. So the brand Liquid Death is brilliant because it looks like beer, but it's just water. And that's why I really like it because I don't stand out too much holding a Liquid Death in a bar because I don't drink. But
I
like,
love I
I
love
don't,
their package design.
Yeah.
It's so
That
cool.
that is I always tell people when they're like, cuz there's a lot like as brand designers, right? There's a lot of people out there who want to say it's not worth it, it's not worth it because brand design is expensive. I think people who've never like investigated and looked into how much it actually costs to hire a brand designer to flesh out like a strategic brand identity for you. Sorry, I don't know, I'm starting to lose my voice a little bit. But when people start to actually look into that and they see the price tag, they're like, what? Because like a lot of people think of graphic design and they think of like that guy who will just like make you something in 5 minutes on Fiverr for like $10. They don't actually consider like having a strategic identity actually made by someone who knows what they're doing and is like well versed in the audience that you're trying to reach. They don't think
Hmm.
about the amount of work that actually goes into good design. And so whenever people see my prices and they weren't initially like looking for a brand designer, I get all the time that my prices are so expensive when in reality they're actually on the lower end of average. They're very very average, but they're on the lower end of average. And so I always think it's like I prefer when my clients too when they come to me and like we do our little like alignment call to figure out if we're aligned. When they're like, oh, I've been shopping around, I'm like, oh, thank God. Because like the people who've been shopping around kind of they know what to expect because they've been looking. But the people who are like, I really just need a logo and they haven't done any research, it's like, it's a whole thing. But that's why I like Liquid Death is one of those brands that I really really like. Do you have any more that you really like that's like has really good packaging and like a good brand identity? Oh,
This is
I
gonna
thought of another
this
one.
is gonna seem really TMI, but my current package of tampons is really satisfying to look at. It's the brand Cora.
I've
Have
never
you
heard of
ever
them.
seen it? I
No,
love they have like a logo type and
I gotta
it's
look
it's
this
very
up.
nice. It's very minimal, but I really dig it.
Oh, I've used these before. Yeah, yeah, simple. I Another one that I really like is I really like Olipop's brand identity too. I think Olipop does a
Hold
good job.
hold. Can I go get a can
Yeah, go get a can.
so I can hold it up to the camera?
Yeah,
Ollipops.
Olipop. I just think it's so cute. It's cute. It comes across as like organic and healthy, but it still like maintains like the poppy like soda pop
Ollie
aesthetic. It's like
sponsor
so
us.
I love Olipop. We should just call this episode gushing over brands that we like. And because I have a lot, I could think of a lot. We could talk about this for an hour for sure. We didn't really have a plan going into this episode.
No, we
I I
didn't.
had I had a guest kind of drop out. Well, I had a guest who we actually recorded an entire episode together. And then right at the end, she was having some really bad technical difficulties with her internet. And then we rescheduled, and she just had to cancel our reschedule. And I just ran out of time and I needed something quick. So this episode is unplanned, but I really would like to talk about more packaging. I'm trying to think of more because there are a lot of
I
really good
also
ones. I don't.
I have a huge book of like award-winning package design.
Mhm.
I could literally just page through it and look through it. It's really nice.
Yeah.
Um,
There's a lot. And it's funny too because I feel like our generation, like we're technically Gen Z, right? We're the
um,
Zoomers.
I I don't know what I am, to be honest.
I want to say that we're Zoomers, but if we are Zoomers, we're at like the older end of Zoomer, young
Definitely,
millennial,
yeah,
young
yeah,
millennial,
definitely for sure.
old Zoomer.
Because there
I
are
feel
a
like
lot of like Gen Z that I just really don't, not that I don't vibe with them, but I just don't feel like I can relate to them as much. But then, like, I don't really relate to a lot of millennials either. Like, my brother is a millennial, and he and I are completely different.
Do you want to know like the reason why that is? And this is gonna, so a lot of our listeners are in this age range of so technically, if you want to look at like the technical definition, so generations are actually determined by astrology, what sign Pluto was in. So technically, anybody born after like 95, 96 is technically a Gen Z. But if you look at numerology, the numerology of people born 2000 and onward is a lot more feminine than anybody born in the 90s. And so there's a huge disconnect between like the Gen Zs who were born in the 90s and then the Gen Zs afterward. And there's not many of us because not very many Gen Zers were born in the 90s because it's kind of like some of us consider ourselves like younger millennials, while some of us are like older Gen Z. But the number 2 is actually a like a more feminine number, like a number of duality, but everybody born in like 97, 98, 99, who are all like kind of technically Gen Z but not really, the reason that a lot of us have a hard time relating to the Gen Zers is because they all have a 2 in the year they were born, and so they have a lot more feminine energy than those of us who were born in the 90s. Just a fun little numerology thing, because the number 1 is definitely a masculine number, and I have the number 1 in every single number in my birthday, because I was born in December, which is 12, the first, which is 1, and then 99, with 1999, 1, and then 3 nines. So
That makes so
it's a
much
whole,
sense.
yeah,
That makes
yeah.
so
It's
much
like
sense.
I'm insane. I'm insane. Like I know a lot of people listening to this are going to be like, "That's so dumb." Read a book about numerology and come back to me after you've been exposed, okay? Because like it's a whole thing. I'm trying to
Meanwhile,
think.
we both have our 888 necklaces on.
Yeah, we both. It's so funny. We both bought these 888 necklaces because we're trying to find balance. Ba- eight, eight, eight out, eight, eight. Oh my goodness, 8 is the number of balance because it's like if you're listening to the audio version of this, I'm trying to make an 8 with my hands. It's just not quite working out. Oh, I
It's
meant for it
also
to.
like harmony, effortless flow, things
Yeah,
like that.
numbers are crazy. Numbers are crazy. I could go on. I could go on about numbers for a long time, but yeah, we got these necklaces for balance because I just think everybody could use a little bit of balance right now, especially the way the world is currently. Just seems like it would be nice.
Yup, yup,
But
exactly.
where I meant to go with that is something interesting about Gen Z that I think a lot of people have noticed and picked up on is Gen Z, and I think it's almost kind of because we've been forced to not care as much as older generations. But I've noticed when I watch like the boomers and the what is it called? They're like what, Gen X, like the boomers, the Gen Xers, and like even like the older millennials, that age group of, I know that's a large age group, but that age group of people, especially like the older people, care so much more about brand names than like younger people. And I don't know really why that is. I've noticed that though, because like for me, right, I go to the store, I do not like, unless the packaging is super cute. As a designer, I have to do my due diligence and buy the cute packaging, right, that I really like. But I
Bingo.
don't but I don't really care. Like I'm not going to go out and buy like a Chanel or like a Michael Kors purse because it's Michael Kors. Of course, like no, I'm just going to buy whatever the cheapest thing that's going to hold my stuff is. I just don't care about, and like I'm not, don't get me wrong, those big name brands that are just like expensive for no good reason, like they've done a great job at like fostering a brand identity. And as a designer, as a brand designer, I have to respect that. But at the same time, as someone who's trying to save money, I just don't care. And it's funny because we look at the older generations, and to them, it's like a symbol of wealth. They're like, oh, well, I have to have my Michael Kors purse. I have to have my Chanel, my I can't even think of them. My Gucci slides and my Gucci belt. I don't know. Like I feel like older people like just care. And there are some younger people who like do like I've had like friends who were really really into like the Gucci belts and like like I had like I had a girlfriend in high school, and she still like she wears like the nicest clothes ever. I have like a few friends who are like this. Like there are some outliers, but I feel like for the most part like our younger generation doesn't care about like buying brand name like expensive things to like have the appearance of wealth. Like I feel like we just don't care as much about that, but the older generations like really do. I don't know how you feel about that, but like that's just something I've
I
noticed.
think a big part of it though is we were all kind of born into a shit economy,
Mm-hmm.
and we never really could buy the things. A lot of us grew up on the struggle bus.
Yeah, that's so
So
true.
we kind of I think we kind of just don't care because we never really had the opportunity to care. But like I don't really feel like I'm missing out either. You know
I
what I
just
mean?
Yeah, and it's really it's interesting. Something else that's interesting to me too is Jen and like all, and I will say this as a brand designer and as like somebody who reads a lot about brands and reads books about brands, and like I'm trying to educate myself in my field obviously as much as I can. If your target demographic is like a younger audience, like a Gen Z person, and that's like your target demographic for your brand and your product, that's not to say that they're not going to go after your brand and they're not going to want to support your brand. But I've just noticed that Gen Z is like very, they support brands for very different reasons than like the older generations, because the older generations, they I feel like a lot of people in the older generations want to like show this appearance of wealth, even if they don't necessarily have it. So they'll buy the nicer cars, they'll buy the nicer purse, they'll buy the big house, even if they can't really afford it because they want that appearance of wealth. And it's funny because Gen Z and like the younger millennials too, but mostly Gen Z, I've noticed just because I feel like I resonate the most with Gen Z, like as somebody who was born in 99, like we want to support brands that are like saving the planet. Like I am much more inclined to buy something if they say like, oh, like we're actually contributing to like cleaning the oceans, and like all the packaging is recycled packaging, and like that brand identity is something I'm more inclined to support than like a it's just expensive. I don't know how else to describe it. The brands that just their whole brand identity is just being like luxury, like
Yeah,
expensive,
it's about
you
the
know?
cause.
Like Gen Z definitely, I think they care more about the cause. And that's why I really like Olipop because I have tummy issues. And I care about that because my tummy hurts all the time. I don't care about
I will
if
say,
somebody,
I will say, as an IBS girly, your fellow IBS girly, Olipop is probably the only soda that doesn't make me feel bad.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm starting to like any like food brand. I support a lot of like food brands, and I have this new there's a lot of like tea brands that I really like too, like Weird Tea. I think they're actually an older brand. I love their packaging. It's very niche, but it's so me and I just love it. And they're like a natural energy drink, and it's crazy because I cannot have caffeine to save my life, but for some reason I drink Weird Tea and I'm fine. Like I don't have panic attacks. It's not the same as coffee. I mean, I've always been better off like with tea, like drinking, like if I drink a green tea, like I'm okay. But if I drink a coffee and I forget to ask for decaf, like I can't do anything the rest of the day. So it's just like certain brands, it's just like it's super interesting to see kind of like, and it's crazy too because that's something like as a brand designer I feel like I have to know like what demographic of people is going to be more likely to support which brand and help kind of steer my clients in the right direction too.
Yeah.
But it's so crazy.
Yeah, I think researching your audience really is a huge part of the project. If not, it's probably one of the most important parts of brand design.
Yeah, and I a lot of clients actually like won't, especially like I said, if they are kind of shopping around and doing their research, obviously like they know what a brand designer is going to do for them if they're shopping around, but
Yeah,
somebody who's just started like a new small business and they don't really know, it's so incredibly cool to be able to explain your process to them, but at the same time, it can be kind of like daunting and scary because a lot of the work, like a lot of people, oh, I'm hiring a graphic designer to make a design, and it's like, well, yeah, but like more than half of the process is research, and a lot of people don't get that. But good
yeah,
design has to be backed by research, otherwise
yeah.
it's not going to meet the objective. A lot of people don't
People,
understand that.
yeah, I find people really they kind of overlook or just don't realize just how strategic design really is. All of the decisions that we make, there's a reason behind them.
Yeah. Yeah, and like that is good design too. And it's so funny too because have you seen the Pepsi Pepsi had a rebrand recently again.
Again,
But the one that they had, the brand identity that they had, I think before this recent rebrand, because I think actually I don't quite remember. I think it was well received, their newest rebrand, but the one they had before it, I don't know who they hired to do this, but they had like an 85-page brand guidelines, and they had like some like Da Vinci, like referencing the Da Vinci. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. They had like some referencing like the Da Vinci Code like in their brand guidelines, and it was like it's like all this like really crazy stuff. And it was so funny because it was literally just like a circle or like a spiral, and it was like per page this of the Da Vinci Code, and everybody was like, "This is okay. That's relevant." Okay. I don't. Have you seen it?
I have. I'm still not like 100% sure what to think of it. I feel like some of it, I feel like a lot of it, you know what? Yeah, sure. They did that research, but I feel like parts of it might just be a little bit overstretched.
Whoever, no, I feel like whoever Pepsi paid probably charged a lot of money. And Pepsi was probably like, well, this brand guidelines better be 85 pages long for what we're paying, like as a joke. And the designer, like, probably took them seriously and was like, oh my God, okay. And
They
then,
just
like,
over, you think the designer really out was just like over explaining themselves?
yeah, because I've done that. I mean, my look, my brand guidelines usually fall between 30 to 40 pages. So I feel like whatever designer they hired probably got to like the 40 or 50 page mark and went, oh my God, what am I gonna fill this with? And then they just started going off the rails. Like, I don't know. I would expect to like I would think that they would hire a team of designers and not just one person, but I guarantee you that it was one person that added all of that like random like sacred geometry Da Vinci Code stuff. And it's funny though cuz I kind of like I do respect it cuz that's some stuff that I would put into like a brand identity, but I wouldn't put it into like Pepsi. I would put that into like a like if so like if I was working on a brand and it was like cuz I work with like a lot of like the woo woo businesses, right? And so if it made sense, sure, we'll throw it in there. But like, I can't. I remember seeing the video, their new rebrand. Everybody was like, oh, it's nice. Like, it's Pepsi. It looks the same. And then every like 5 to 10 years, it looks slightly different. That's cool. Like, they don't ever change it too drastically. Why would you? It's Pepsi. They already, I don't know. Yeah, I feel like sometimes too, like it's nice to give a little refresh here and there. And I also, ooh, something else that I really like that brands do. And I kind of like have a little plan to do this for myself, but I don't know how exactly I'm going to implement it. But when a brand is really established, like Coca Cola did this recently, they can like kind of break the rules to do like a limited edition like flavor or like a limited edition like thing. And they recently did like this limited edition. It was like pink and black instead of like their red and white. And it was so cool looking. And it did make me want to buy it. And I love when brands do that because, first of all, anything limited edition, I'm going to be like, oh, well, I got to try it at least. I mean, it's not going to be around much longer. And then,
Yeah.
second, if the packaging is different too, and this is a thing, this is something I actually used to collect limited edition like packaging. And then I moved to this like shoebox and I got rid of all of my collection. But I literally used to collect like I think I had like a Mountain Dew bottle that was in like a limited edition packaging and it was like really illustrative and really really cool and I really enjoyed it. But man, I don't know, it's crazy. Can you think of any other brands that you really like their packaging and their brand identity is really strong? I'm trying to think of more.
So this isn't exactly like about like their branding identity, but maybe this leans a little bit more into like ad because like I'm in the ad world.
Mhm.
The thing that I really love to see is when the shoe brands collab with artists. So like we got Doc Martin and we got Vans. I think Converse does this too, but I'm not 100% sure. Don't quote me on that. But I love to see when they collab with artists and they kind of like design a shoe. It's like
Mhm.
my favorite thing ever because I feel like it's so cool to see an artist create like a new product out of something. I think it's really smart to collab with artists for things. And I know there are a lot of brands too that collab with artists to make different products. Like Starbucks is always collabing with artists for cup designs and mural art. I'm blanking on other ones right now. Those are just like my immediate thoughts.
Yeah.
But it's one of my favorite things to see when Vans dropped all of the Van Gogh shoes. I scooped those up. You just know
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah. I one of my favorite artists, she's a comic book artist, Jen Bartel. She did a collab. She did a few shoe collabs. I know for a fact that I want to say she did Adidas, but she definitely did Puma. She did like a few different shoes and oh my gosh, so cool. First of all, cuz
Yeah,
she's an artist for oh man. I I don't know if she's a comic book artist for DC or Marvel. It may even be both. I'm not sure. But I love her work and her collab was awesome. Somebody else that came to mind who was really like one of the most successful artists who got famous from collaborating with established brands, Takashi Murakami. Literally collaborated with like Gucci and Prada and like all of the like and it's crazy too because like I don't even this guy must seriously have the mindset of a champion because like if I cuz have you've seen Takashi Murakami's art, right? It's
actually, I
very
haven't.
it's okay. Hold on. I'll send you a link to it. It's very Hello Kitty. We have an episode about Takashi Murakami and it's actually one of our most popular episodes ever. But he does a lot. It's like I guarantee you that you've seen like at least some of it somewhere somehow. I'm sending you a link to like just his Google Google page, but he does like the happy smiling flowers. It's very iconic. But it's
Oh, I've seen
interesting.
this. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I know who this is.
he's so
Yep.
famous. He's such a famous guy, and he can collaborated with like those like I don't know specifically which ones, but it was like like the Gucci, the Prada, like the big like expensive brands, and like that's where he made like all of this money, and it's crazy because like I know like my mindset could be better, especially when I was first starting. And if I would have told myself, oh, like, because I feel like his style doesn't scream like Gucci, Prada, Fenty, I don't know, like all of like the big name brands. Like it doesn't like it's cutesy and it's like Hello Kitty and it's like like but he just said no, like I'm gonna be on a Gucci belt, like it's fine. And like he did. Like he just did. And it was successful. It was like one of their most successful collaborations point blank period. And he's like one of the most famous artists who's alive today
Mhm.
because of this. And
Mhm.
he's just so like brilliant and it's crazy. I love Takashi Murakami. He's so I would definitely, if you're interested in learning more about him, definitely like scroll way back because it's an older episode, but definitely listen to our episode about him because it goes a lot into like his life and his work and how he went about these collaborations. But that's, yeah, I like that too. And I think collaborating with artists, like you said, is really smart because a lot of brands, they'll collaborate with celebrity and I don't feel like it's as effective. But when you collaborate with an artist, they know how to make stuff look good and how to make people. And then they also, too, a lot of the collaborations that I've seen, like if I follow, like what Jen Bartel is someone who I've followed on Twitter for a long time. And then I have some artists who I followed on Instagram who have done mostly shoe collaborations. I don't know why shoe brands do this so often, but they do.
Because people love cool shoes.
That's
Like
so
just
true.
point blank, that's really what it is.
That is so true. Yeah, people do love cool shoes. And I guess it is
I
like,
will spend money on a pair of cool Doc Martens. I
yeah,
will.
yeah, that's so true. Because Doc Martens are expensive as they are. And I think it's like, it's such a win too. And that's another thing too. Like, I feel like if more of these brands hired artists, they would see so much success because we know how to make something attractive to a buyer. That's our whole job. And I feel like a lot of the businesses that I work with, like that are kind of smaller, like newly established businesses, like they have this anxiety about working with an artist or working with a designer, but it literally is like some of the success of some of like the biggest brands in the world have kind of fallen on the shoulders of artists who just are just so creative and just do like whatever they know that they're the best at, and it just is really successful. And not to mention too, like when an artist that I'm following does a collab, like I will purchase just because I like the artist and I want to support the artist. So you're kind of also opening to an entirely new demographic of people because, right, like if you take like for example Vans, like I don't like I don't really skateboard. Vans are like skater shoes. Converse are like
I don't
skater
skateboard
shoes.
either, but I wear Vans on the daily.
Yeah, well actually I was just wearing Vans today. Ooh, this is another thing too. It's a collab. I was just wearing these shoes. I have them right here. These are my shoes. So I've had these forever. They're Alice in Wonderland Vans. I'm a big Alice in Wonderland girly, and it has like the Cheshire cat, and they're so cute. And that's just a brand collab. And I know I'm not a huge fan of Disney, but I'm a big Alice in Wonderland girl. And I just like, that's what I'm saying. Like everything that I own that I really really like is cuz it's a collaboration and it's just so unique that I just had to have it.
Yeah. That's how they
Right.
get the art hose. It's us. We're
Yeah.
the art hose.
Yeah, I'll just buy anything if an artist like touched it. An artist that I like, just like I'll be like, "Oh, give to me."
Unrelated, but you held up your shoe and I was like, we might be the same shoe size.
What size are you?
I'm a 7.
Oh, I'm a 4.5.
Never mind.
I barely can stand. It's why I'm so clumsy. It's so funny. Like, I just like kind of fall a lot, and I think it's because I don't have a lot of good back. Like, I'm like top heavy with no feet, so I'm just walking around on little pegs. But yeah, in women's, the largest size that I'm able to get away with wearing is like a 6, maybe a 6.5. But I try to buy those were definitely from the children's section. All my Nikes that are back there. Also a collab. Well, not actually. I don't know if it was a collab, but they were limited edition. See, everything I buy is either it's a collab or it's limited edition. That's the kind of stuff I wait for. I really like that. But I have I get screw it. I'll bring my Air Forces out here. So, and I actually, those of you who've listened to this podcast for a while, I worked on Nike stuff, and so that's the only reason I had these. But these are actually my limited edition Valentine's Day Nikes, and they're so cute. They have the script Nike with a little heart on the eye on the back, and they're pink. And I just think they're so cute, and I love these shoes. They're my favorite, but they're limited edition Valentine's Day. And I love them. I love like the limited edition stuff. I think that when your brand is done really well and it's established and you have an audience, drop something limited. Call up your designer, call up your brand designer. You've been in business for 5 years. Everybody who supports your brand, they know your brand, they love your brand. Call up your brand designer and say, "We want to do something limited edition. What can you give us?" I guarantee you, they're gonna knock it out of the park. They're gonna knock
Yeah,
it out of the park, especially
yeah.
if your brand has seen success since you've started. Like it's seen massive growth and like the goals that you wanted to reach when you hired a brand designer, if those are met and your brand designer did a good job, call them back and be like, we want to do a limited edition or we want to do like a collab with your brand. And just like I am telling you right now. It's such a good idea. I love to drop money on a good limited edition
Me too.
product.
Me
Yeah.
too. Yep.
Yeah. I think it's so funny like talking about this like from the perspective of being a designer but also as a consumer too. That's just what I like and I don't know if it's unique to me or not, but I don't know.
I mean, there's a reason why it exists.
That's so true. I'm trying to think of another brand that I really like. Ooh, well, no. It's not that I don't like them. I was going to say Strathmore, but I don't like their branding. I just think they have a really good product. See, and that's like another thing. I feel like if you have a really good product and you have like meh branding, you are missing out. And I feel like that's what Strathmore. I really like their sketchbooks. Like I always buy a good like I'll always buy a Strathmore, but I feel like if they had more like artsy and fun, like modern poppy like branding, I feel like they would they would sell a lot more.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of art supply brands, they
They
kind of
lean
do.
they lean like fine arts instead of
Yeah,
like the fun,
yeah.
most of us
Well,
are.
fine artists, again, we have to remember fine artists aren't designers.
Mhm.
Not trying to separate us, but us designers, we do have a specific eye for these things for a reason. We're trained to look for these things. And quite frankly, we're just not their audience. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm part of their audience, I guess technically because I'm also an artist, but I'm not expecting the fine art brands to cater to me because they're not catering to designers. They're catering to fine artists, and fine artists, they're like, I'm sure they do appreciate pretty packaging, but what they really care the most about is that it's just good quality supplies.
Yeah, that's true. I hadn't really thought about it like that. I just noticed too like when I'm shopping for like a new sketchbook and it's crazy to me too that none of these art supply brands have really that I've seen anyway like in like a mainstream store in like a Michael's craft supply store or like a Blix. I feel like none of them have really hit hard on like the bright poppy like branding, and I get that they probably are for the most part like if you're selling like sketchbooks and stuff catering to fine artists, but designers, almost every designer I know uses sketchbooks too. So I'm kind of like, huh.
Yeah,
I wonder if there ever will be like a brand, like a fine arts, like an art supply brand that caters more to designers because we also use that stuff, you know?
yeah, it's true.
But I
I
feel like
think I think people forget that designers draw.
yeah, but not all of them, and I think
Not
that's what
all of
people
them.
forget because
Yeah,
it's crazy too because I work.
not all of us are illustrators.
Yeah, and like as somebody, I feel like I've been slacking, guys. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I'm so sorry. I've been kind of like not pulling my weight in the community as much as of late because I've just had a lot of like crazy personal stuff going on. But I feel like at one point I was really doing a good job of making a name for myself in the art and design community, especially like with this podcast. A lot of people, like, just a lot of like mutual friends, like online, like in this community. And as I kind of was doing that, I did like meet a lot of design, and I still like I know so many other artists and designers because it's like the art community as a whole is really really interesting and really really different from a lot of other communities because I feel like the best artists in this community are very well aware of the fact that we're not in competition with each other because like art, I mean, some artists do believe that, and some designers do believe like yes, we are in direct competition because like tech, like if you want to get technical with it, yeah, like we kind of are competing for work, but at the same time we're really not because every artist and every designer is going to have a completely different set of strengths and weaknesses and everybody is going to be good at different things. And so like if there's a designer, for example, that specializes in working with like nature brands, if you have like a comic book store, you're not going to go to them, you know, you'll go to me. So like that said, like having worked with all of these different designers, I would say more than 75% of them do not consider themselves to be illustrators and can't really draw. Like that's not like a skill that they've taken the time to strengthen. In fact, I've met a lot more brand designers who've strengthened their UX UI before they took like a dive into illustration. And I think that
Yeah,
makes like art designers like you and me have like it's funny because it's like we have an edge over them, but also like I don't do UX UI and
I
that I
I can't
know.
really. I'm definitely not a web designer.
Yeah, me
Definitely
neither.
print design girly for sure.
Me too. Me too.
And it's kind of funny because like we do have a little bit of that advantage because we are illustrators, but at the same time, like UX UI, like it's very needed. It's so essential. It's honestly probably something that I should teach myself, but
Yeah.
I don't, I feel like I just don't have that, you know?
Yeah. And like that's the thing with me too is I see the need for it and people will reach deep in their pockets for UX UI and that's why so many designers, okay, I've learned brand design, I've learned Adobe Illustrator. They don't immediately think to strengthen their illustration skills. They think I'm going to do UX UI because every business needs a website, and they're not wrong. Like
It's,
it's
it's
true, but
true.
I want to learn that skill too, but at the same time I'm not even going to front with you guys. I hate designing websites. Designing my own, I didn't even really design my own website. I used a template, and even that the whole time I was like, oh, when is this going to be over? I hate it. And every time I have
I
to update my website,
love Squarespace.
yeah, I had a Squarespace site before. I've switched to Show It. I prefer Show It to Squarespace for myself personally. I think Show It is very similar to Adobe Illustrator, and it was a lot easier for me to use and navigate than
Hmm.
Squarespace. Squarespace, there was kind of a learning curve, and where I was like clicking something, and I was like, "Why no? Do what I want." But with Show It, I really like using Show It a lot more than Squarespace, but Squarespace has an advantage to it because you can use it for e-commerce and like all of the other things, and
Yeah,
Show It really is not good for e-commerce really at all.
yeah.
It's good for blogs, you know, if you want to write a little blog, but it's just
Back
yeah.
back to being a I like to call us design illustrators. I didn't come up with that. I stole that from my college prof who taught me everything that I not everything that I know about illustration, but pretty much everything that I know about like digital illustration. She didn't teach me how to draw, but she taught me how to use like all the programs, right? But she did also help me strengthen myself, like strengthen my skills as an illustrator, as an artist. She's a great teacher, and an even greater illustrator. But anyway, I think the reason why you and I and other designers who tend to lean more towards illustration, I think part of it just also comes from growing up doing it.
Hmm.
You know, like that was our first introduction to art. and creating. That was our first instinct, was to just draw. And because we've been doing it our whole lives, it's kind of just like ingrained in us at this point. Like, why wouldn't we utilize that skill in
Mm-hmm.
our design work? You know, if it's not, I feel like if you're not constantly spending time training yourself to make drawing feel more like a second nature, you're really not inclined to go for it. You know what I mean? Like, you're not inclined to really resonate with the idea of practicing illustration, you know?
Yeah, and that's something else to consider too is and
Like,
I
I was an artist before I was a designer.
mhm. Yeah, me too. And I think that is what sets there's a lot of things that set apart designers who also illustrate from just like designers who and like I mentioned web designers, but there's a lot of different kind of niches that designers can have. It's like a art, especially nowadays. It's not even like people get so freaked out over like the whole AI art thing, thinking it's going to steal our jobs. I don't see that happening. There's just so much you can do under the umbrella of being a creative nowadays, and it's honestly the most, in my opinion anyway, the most necessary profession. But in terms of like separating designers who illustrate from the designers who don't illustrate, it's like you said, like I grew up drawing. Like it was always kind of something I did, even when I was not really, because I had periods in my life where I was in theater and I was, what else did I do? I did theater for a long time. Okay, I'll just use theater as an example. But all through middle school and a little bit into high school, I did theater and art wasn't really my focus. But it was so funny because I still ended up being the one to paint all the sets. Like I had a lead role. I was the scarecrow in the Wizard of Oz, and I still was also the one to paint all the sets, and I designed the sets, and I made the drawing for the Munchkin Land, and I was like, I think we should do this, and my theater teacher was like, that's really cool, let's do it. And it's just it like, if you don't already have that natural inclination to draw, learning illustration as a designer is going to be so much harder for you. And I think that's why we see a lot of designers who don't illustrate, because it is so much easier to just not do it, because illustration isn't a skill that you can pick up. Like, there is no 6 week, I mean, I guess there is probably out there like a 6 weeks course to learn illustration, but it's not gonna you can't really learn how to be an illustrator in 6 weeks. It's kind of like a lifelong thing. And even after you've been doing it, like, as somebody who's been drawing my whole life, my whole 23 years, like, I compare myself to other people, and I'm like, I have a long way to go before I'm where I want to be. And I think every single illustrator, every artist who draws or paints or whatever, like, I think all of us feel that way. And if
Yeah.
you don't feel that way and you're just saying, oh, I want to, because and I've mentored some designers too, and I've had people message me and be like, how did you learn illustration, because I want to add it as a service to my business. And I was like, well, it's not, like, it's not something that you can, I mean, like, yeah, there probably are courses that you could take to learn how to illustrate, but you're not going to get really really good at it. It's like a big commitment to learn that specific skill. And
Hmm.
most of us who did it, like you said, have been doing it our whole life. It was just something that we always did. It's like a second nature. And even the people that have it as like a second nature, we're always like, how can we get better? Like, it's a constant like growing thing. I feel like my illustration skills, I finally, and it took me more than 20 years to get to this point, but I finally am at a place where I'm like, I feel like my illustrations are good enough for me to add it as a service and be able to charge people money, because I've been doing this my whole life and I've worked really hard. And I think, my illustration skills, while I know that I can get better at illustrating myself, I also know for a fact that the illustrations that I can make currently are professional grade. Like I can, I can vectorize my artwork, I can make it print really nice, I can do all of these things. And there are a lot of designers who, I think, don't realize it's almost like a lifelong commitment, and you need it to be second nature. And it's just funny to me. Not that there's anything wrong with not wanting to be an illustrator. Like if you're a designer and like illustration isn't your thing, and you do like, you have a different niche, like that's totally fine. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying a lot of people think that that's something that you can just learn quickly, and it's just really not. It's hard.
It is. It really is. And it's not just about the act of drawing. It's a different way of thinking. You have
Mhm.
to learn to think and get your brain to work a certain way just to even be able to look at something and draw it.
Yeah.
Like right now I'm trying to teach my husband how to draw. He decided within the last couple of months that he wants to learn how to draw. And I was like, okay, that's great. You can learn as long as you are really willing to commit and practice. But the first lesson of drawing is just changing your mindset and how you think when you're looking at, especially with like observational drawing. I said to him, I was like, you need to become an excellent observer in order to be able to draw. Half of drawing is observation.
Hmm. Yeah. And it's it's funny too, because I didn't even really think about it that way, because from like my perspective, right? I grew up with like my dad is an artist, and I remember as young as like 2, 3, 4 years old asking my dad, teach me how to draw this. And my whole life, it's always been, okay, well, I want to draw this. And then my dad would draw it and he'd say, just copy this. And then I grew up learning to draw copying things. And then in like around middle school age, like sixth, seventh, eighth grade, I started really being like, okay, if I want to get good, I just have to copy things. And
But even as you're copying things, you're observing.
exactly.
If
Because,
you're copying something, you need to be able to pick out fine details.
and it's like, it's interesting because I almost feel like, as somebody who, like, if you start copying that young, where you're like a toddler, it's hard to. And this is another reason too, like I have had teachers, so many teachers throughout my life. I remember I had this awesome language arts teacher that I keep having dreams about recently for some reason, but she's so cool. Her name was Miss Norris, and she's still a teacher.
Miss Norris, if you're out there, Kate's having dreams about you.
Yeah, I know. I need to. I literally have an email to her drafted, like a little creep, but I haven't sent it yet because I'm like nervous, because I'm about to like send an email like, you haven't heard from me in 10 years, but I was the reason that you got that bonus when I was in eighth grade because I got a perfect score on my writing standardized test. Anyway. But yeah, no, I remember in eighth grade, like right before graduation, when we weren't really doing much work. I remember asking her, like, what do you think I'm gonna be when I grow up? And she said, you're gonna be an art teacher. And I laughed in her face and I said, I am not gonna be no teacher. And she would be like, she would always tell me, you would make a great teacher. And I'd be like, have you seen me try to explain anything to anyone ever? And that is like the one thing that I'm like, it's funny because I host this podcast too, and I sit here and talk myself into a hole every single episode because I'm trying to explain myself so much that I just can't. It's a whole mess. But she used to always tell me, she'd be like, you would make an excellent art teacher. And it's funny because I do kind of like act as a mentor to some degree to some people. Obviously,
Yeah,
I'm not like, I'm a professional, but I'm still young. So obviously I'm not out here teaching courses or anything crazy like that. I'm just like, this is what I'm good at and this is what I can
I
teach.
I
I
honestly I think one of my favorite parts now of being a professional is mentoring.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's one of my favorite things, actually. I really love it when we get interns at my day job because I just love to help them. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I love to be that person that just kind of like assures them that it's going to be okay. You have a lot to learn, but like it's going to be okay and you're going to learn it. And like eventually you'll be in my place doing the same thing,
Yeah,
you
because it's
know?
it's healing. It's healing
Yeah.
because that was you. And nobody
Yeah.
said that to you.
Well, I did actually. I had a couple pretty good mentors while I was interning. I was fortunate. My first internship, not so much, but my second one was pretty solid, and now I work there, so like, it's great. But I do find it very healing to help those who need it.
Yeah, that's
Wow.
part of why I started Artwise too, is because, and it's so funny because when I started Artwise, I was very new in my career journey as an artist, but I always, even when I was in high school, my very first YouTube video is still up on my channel. I don't know how many of you guys listen to this podcast on YouTube, not a lot, honestly. I feel like most of our listeners still stick to the tried and true Apple podcast for the most part. But for those of you who do listen on YouTube, my very first ever video, I was 17 years old and I was making a video like just showing like this is my accepted art portfolio. I got accepted into every art school like with scholarships. Like here's how I did it. Like just to try and like, be helpful. And I
Yeah.
feel like it is healing because at one point, like if you think about yourself, because like time, I don't know, time isn't really real. Like we're kind of every version of ourselves all at once, and it's like really confusing, but also I feel like that's what leads a lot of us who want to mentor others and want to help others and want to go on a podcast and talk about what we do and help the past version of ourselves who wanted to go in this direction but wasn't really sure like where to get started or how to do it. Like just it's healing because even if you had like good mentors like helping you, like it's healing in the way. So like for me, like part of the reason why I like mentoring people is because I didn't feel like up until a certain point there was a period in my life where you know I didn't have one in certain areas of certain things, because obviously I grew up with my dad who's an artist and I have had mentors along the way kind of step in and step out. But like there were times where I wanted to do something very specific in my art career, whether it was like learn a skill or get like a certain career path or like work my way up in like a certain job or like what have you. Like there's a million different like examples that I could give. But when I've made it and I look back and I see somebody who's in like the same spot that I was in, I just want to help them so badly and be like, well, actually, like, even though it feels like the end of the world, it's not. Like, we're going to figure it out. And like, I want to help just because I was you once, And so it's like that's healing. It's also healing to like kind of become somebody who you looked up to as well, because it's like I feel like as I get older too, it's really hard to see myself as an adult, as a professional in my field, as and it's crazy too because so many people, and it's amazing. And like if you would have told me, and I know that like people who look at my, the Artwise account and like my Instagram account, I'm not like wildly famous or anything, but I get some really kind messages from people like somewhat frequently just saying like, hey, like I really look up to you, or hey, I really like your designs and I watch all your TikToks, and like I know this is weird, but like I just wanted to thank you. And it's like, yeah, like keep sending those, because first of all, it's not creepy because like I used to do the same. I still do that. I'll still message people and be like, I really like your stuff that you're making. Do you want to collaborate, whatever? And sometimes they never answer, and sometimes, different things occur, but it's just like it's hard for me sometimes, even though like I am like reaping kind of the rewards of like having a career that's like in the beginning stages of like what I think in the next 5-10 years will be extremely successful. It's hard to look at it from an outside perspective, because like to myself I'm still like that kid too, like that's still learning, because I know that I have a lot to learn and there's a lot of things that I want to do, and it's also like it's just so difficult. It's so difficult, but also it's like
Yeah.
it's rewarding and it's confusing and it's like complicated, but it's really cool too.
It's natural to feel that way though, because at the end of the day, even though we are professionals now, this type of craft skill set, it's a lifelong journey. It's going to evolve in so many different ways. You have no idea where any of this is going to really take you, and I think that's the beauty of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I know now, if my younger self, if she could see like what I am doing right now, she would probably shit herself. I don't know. She'd probably just be jumping up and down. I don't
yeah.
know.
I
We're
think
just
a
really
lot.
proud.
I think a lot about, like, if I could go back in time right now and tell like my 13, 14-year-old self like where I'm at right now, I genuinely don't know if she would be happy for me or really disappointed, because like I really like my whole life I had like a very like specific dream of what I wanted to do, and I had it and I threw it away because it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And
Oh
so
my
I always
God.
like, it's funny because so many people too, and there has been in the past too like a TikTok trend of people being like, "Oh, like my past self or my child, like going back to my child, my inner child, going like back to my inner child, traveling back in time, like how would they react if you told them, like would they be excited, would they be this?" Like I genuinely don't know like how my inner child might just be like happy to be making art, but my teenage self might be like, are you kidding me? Really, that's what we did? But also like it's just like it's just interesting, it's interesting to think about, and it's like it is such a journey. This was such a good episode too, even though we didn't really plan it. I feel like we talked about a lot of really important stuff too.
Yeah, I think so too.
Is there anything you want to add before we wrap up the episode?
Not that I can think of. I mean, we didn't really have much of a plan for this one to
No, we
begin with,
didn't.
but I can't, I think we covered the most important parts.
Yeah, for sure. So did you want to go ahead and plug your stuff and let people know where they can find you and support you before we close it out?
Well, this episode isn't really about me, but yeah, sure. We can. So last time I was on Artwise, I went by Carly K Design, but now we go by Synergy Creative Studio.
Ooh, fancy.
So, with that being said, my handle is the same thing for everything. It's synergycreative.studio. Website, TikTok, Instagram, all of it. Synergycreative.studio. And on top of branding and illustration, I now offer synesthesia paintings, and soon you'll be seeing hopefully some prints and merch.
Hell yeah. Well, thank you, Carly, for coming on to talk to me again. This was a lovely episode. I'm very happy with it. It's like the semifinals of like America's Got Talent, because this is the second to last episode of season 3. So I think I was like, it's this nice little episode, like nice little chatty, like flowy little episode going. So thanks
The,
again for taking
yeah,
the time to hang out with me for an hour again.
the vibes
And
are always good.
vibes are always good.
It's never a problem.
So true. And for those of you who made it this far into the episode, thank you guys so much for supporting Artwise. I appreciate every single one of you. And I also just wanted to remind you that next week's episode, episode 100, is going to be the season 3 finale. I do not mention it in the episode because at the time of recording it, I wasn't 100% sure if I wanted it to be the season finale or not. So I just said, I'll see you when I see you at the end. And then I just left it at that. And like, I never said, this is the finale, because I wasn't sure if I wanted it to be the finale. But after some thought and deliberation, that it's the finale. So you won't hear from me here on Artwise for a while after that episode comes out. But if you still want to keep up with me, Kate Merriman Art on everything, on Instagram, on every platform, on Instagram, TikTok. My website is katemerrimanart.com. If you want to keep up with me, those are the best places to do so. I try to post every single day. Haven't been doing the best job of that as of late with the hurricane, and my personal life is just honestly a shit show. But yeah, so definitely keep up with me there, and on the Artwise Podcast Instagram account, where you'll get updates on when season 4 is starting, probably next year in 2024. But yeah, those are the most important things for you guys to know. Thank you again, and thank you again, Carly, for coming on and chatting with me. And I will see all of you guys for the Artwise season 3 finale and 100th episode of Artwise next Tuesday. Bye, everyone. I like the music a lot, and I like my dance that I do.